A second. And we are recording. So I'm going to introduce Mr. Mike Bellini. We've been friends for, I think, at least 2 years now. Mm-hmm. We had our first challenge, the Goggins Challenge, back in March of 2021. We were in the same men's group, Sons of Thunder, together. I met Mike for the first time at Mid-State. He's now a friend, as a co-author as well with his book, Ultra Marriage, which I just finished last week, and it's highly recommended for everyone to read, whether you're married or not. But I definitely learned a lot about what I can do better as a husband for my wife. We just had our 15th year anniversary this week, and I did one of Mike's things is shower her with notes. It definitely worked. I think the one thing I learned from Mike's book, but beyond many things, is just doing little things that matter. And you don't have to get her roses every day. I think the big thing is that you just make sure that you're very intentional, you show you care and you love her, and you grow in that relationship. And the reason why I have Mike on today is to talk about his book, but to really dig deep about relationships. So there's two parts to this I really want Mike to talk about. One, the relationship with our spouses, and then also the relationships with one another. And 40 days, Mike really is, we have daily disciplines, but also the most important thing that I've learned in this group is about the fellowship and the love we have for one another, of sharing. And I think the more vulnerable we are and truthful about, and we had some great posts today by some members about what we're struggling with, and the more that we learn to grow together. So without further ado, Mike Bellini, you could give a little bit more about your background. I know a lot about you more since reading your book, but I'll let you go ahead and give a little more information. Okay.
Will do. Yeah, John, I appreciate that. And that was one thing I didn't realize as much as I was writing the book and getting it published was just how much of myself and my wife were in it. It just, as I was writing it, it just was natural. And then people keep asking, are you concerned about having all that personal stuff out there? And just like, it's just me. I don't know. So I appreciate it. I just celebrated my 25th anniversary last month with my wife. So quarter of a century, it's hard. It's just still hard to believe. It does not feel like 25 years. I'm sure for you, I'm sure it's the same way, John. 15 years just kind of goes by like that.
Right.
And I have two kids. One is a rising senior in college, and the other just graduated high school. And we actually just got back from orientation last week. We had 2-day orientation for her. She's going to be a freshman this year. And so my wife and I are going to be empty nesters in T-minus 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
3 weeks from today will essentially be one of our first days as empty nesters. So it's interesting that the book was timely for in writing. It was very timely for me and for us. Like you said, John, I learned so much about what I can do better. And so I know that, not everybody is married. The book it's about stories from my marriage, so it's tailored to that. However, one of the earliest pieces of feedback that I received was that it pertains to all relationships. There are aspects of it that pertain to all relationships. And what I want to touch on today is really just that. I will share in the context of my marriage and the importance of this, but this really touches all relationships in our lives in general. And what I want to talk about is priorities. To me, it's more important than ever that we have our priorities in order. And this is, in all transparency, this is something I constantly work on in both my family as well as personal endeavors, is prioritizing. Because if you're anything like me, I have about 75 different things going on in my head. Boy, that'd be great to work on. I'd love to do that. I'd love to work towards that. And the reality is we only have time to do really one thing at a time, being where our feet are. And what I lay out kind of in both in the book and again, I would highly recommend thinking about this. And a lot of people will say that their priorities are this: God, family, work, but very few of us actually act that out. in a day-to-day basis, myself included. So in terms of relationships, in terms of our family, and specifically, if we talk about marriage, my wife and I, our priorities are God, spouse / marriage, children, in that order. We don't always do it right. Our actions don't always reflect that, but that's always our compass that we come back to. We're consciously aware of if our rudder's kind of getting off that a little bit. So those are the priorities we shoot for. For us, it's worked, and I think this is the way to really make an impact in our culture, and to kind of solidify and create and build a foundation in our families that really is unshakable and unstoppable. So God, marriage, kids. God is, and I'll speak about God first. In our marriage, God is at the center. He is the head. This does a couple of things, putting him at the head of our marriage. It removes a couple of things. It removes a bit of selfishness, because I'm not looking at, hey, this is all about me. Not to say that I don't, because we all do, right? But as a compass, putting God at the center kind of removes the selfishness. And if we're both aligned, my wife and I aligned in that priority, then we're both looking to him first. We're not looking to our own selfish habits first, our own selfish wants, our own self-centeredness. We're looking for, what does he want first? So whenever we kind of, when things get a little troublesome, or we're at odds at some things, we always come back to that. Okay, doesn't matter what you want, doesn't matter what I want. What does God want in this? It also removes a bit of ego. As a man, in the husband, in our family, I want to be the provider. It's worked out to where my wife is a school teacher. I have been blessed enough in my career path to where, being a school teacher, school teachers are some of the most underpaid professionals in the world. It's unfortunate, but you have to have a heart for teaching to be able to do that. However, there's that trade-off of, my wife, I've historically made more money than my wife. So that can build the ego a bit. And so when you reach times of difficulty, financial times of difficulty, it hits my ego quite a bit. Putting God at the head of our family as our provider, as our source of everything, helps to remove that a little bit. I'll share a quick story on that, in that I'm going back a while ago now. It's probably, I guess it's been probably close to 15 years now. Both of our kids were under 5, and I lost my job. My wife wasn't working at the time. We decided that we wanted her to be a stay-at-home mom. Actually, I should say we wanted one of us to be a stay-at-home parent. And we chose for her to do that while our kids were young. I lost my job. It wasn't completely unexpected, but it was, you could see the warning signs. The company that I was working for was in a lot of trouble, and they were involved in illegalities. So once I refused to be involved in that, they showed me the door. And we had just come off of a really extended time of both my wife and I being out of work for about 15 months. So imagine mid-30s, 2 kids under 5. I'd just been out of work for about 15 months. My wife didn't work during that time either. Our savings was pretty close to this by that time, and got a job. And then subsequently, about a year later, lost it. So we were back where we were with no jobs. And, at first you would think that I would just flip out and just really concerned. We had I'd say roughly about 2 months worth of savings on hand that could carry us for a couple of months. Beyond that, we would have had to make some serious decisions, and lifestyle. We had already made some lifestyle changes, but even greater lifestyle changes. And I remember going on a prayer walk right when I got home from getting fired, and thinking, what an opportunity for God to show his leadership in our family. And my wife was the same. It wasn't just me, but it was removing the ego that I have to be the provider, that I have to, be the source for my family. And it was, golly, this could really be a moment that solidifies his leadership in our marriage and in our family. and our kids are both under 5. We got a long way to go. And what an opportunity for him to do that. Complete perspective change. But that is an example of how we put God first. We didn't put it on ourselves. Obviously, we had things to execute and actions that we wanted to take. But we put the burden on God's shoulders and said, we'll do whatever you want us to do. Just show us the way, and we will be as obedient as we know how to do and order our steps from there. So, I mean, 15-ish years later, he's honored that, he's blessed that. And, it was an amazing, momentous occasion for my wife and I, and what could have been really a situation that could really hinder and destroy some marriages.
So Mike, can I interject for 1 second?
Uh-huh.
If I have your story correct, in that situation, you had like 2 months or something to had enough savings, and you said, I'm going to trust God for 2 months until Halloween.
Yeah.
Right. That I'm not going to worry. I'm
Yeah.
going to just put this on God, and then just literally trust him to pave the way for the future for my wife and I, our finances. Mm-hmm. And he mm-hmm. did just that. You got the job, I think, like a week before, somewhere close to that date, right?
Yep, it was. And I struggled with anxiety when I was younger. So I could have easily just really flipped out, honestly, at this point. And to John, what John said was, I knew we had at least 2 months worth of savings. And this was like 2007, just to put perspective. The housing market was crashing. The stock market was declining. It was the worst job market that I've ever known in my lifetime. And I told God, I said, I won't worry about this for at least 2 months. Now, after that, I reserve the right to complain and flip out as much as possible. But for 2 months, not going to worry at all. I will just execute however you want me to execute. And he laid out a plan. And like John, and that was Halloween. It was August when I got fired. And so I said, I'm just not going to worry until at least Halloween. After that, I may change my mind. And I accepted the job 2 days before Halloween. It was just unimaginable. It never has worked out that way, that easily for me in the past.
So one thing that I learned from that story was you decided, you and your wife and your family, were putting God in control. We're letting go of our egos. We're putting God in control, number one. Mm-hmm. And then number two, the second part, I'm going to segue into this because I'm just looking at a time frame here that we have, is that you and your wife, you put your wife first and in front of your children. And I think that's very important, because I've had many discussions with people in the group where I think it's the other way around, where they put their children on a pedestal and they kind of have put their wife or their spouse to the side over the years, and it's created a divide. So what recommendation would you have for those individuals?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of priority, God first and marriage second. The marriage has to be above the kids. There's a lot of research that shows that kids that kind of come from, have broken homes or homes where, there isn't a lot of love shown. They have higher academic problems, more promiscuity, teen pregnancy, alcohol, drug abuse, violence, emotional problems, and a broken home or dysfunctional home doesn't necessarily need to mean divorce. You can have disconnect and brokenness for 50 years in a marriage. I've seen it. And so, but kids that grow up in a home with two loving parents with a lot of that stability, again, research shows that they are more secure, their grades are better, future is better in really all respects. So what does that mean? That means that it doesn't mean completely, ignore your kids and they're at the bottom rung. It just means you have to prioritize your marriage first. The marriage is the foundation of a family, if you have a family. And it means, like, when you come home from work, you, as much as you can, you acknowledge your spouse first. You could sit down and have 15 minutes, just 10 to 15 minutes of quality communication time with your spouse, making sure that you're going on a date once a week. I would suggest at least a couple times a month, but at least once a week, specific time that you and your spouse are going to communicate. And where we can talk about that all day, and it doesn't sound like a whole lot, right? Once a week, an hour, or maybe two. But how often do we get into these patterns to where it's like week after week after week? Like my wife and I now, if we go 2 to 3 weeks without having a specific date time and communication time, we feel it. We feel the tension. It's really wild how we've gotten so used to that we know automatically when we're getting out of that pattern. Then we start to think, when was the last time we were out on a date together? It was 3 weeks ago. No wonder. So, and even through the difficult financial times that I've just mentioned, there was one thing that we did not skimp on, and that was making sure we had a babysitter when we had enough money to, making sure we had a babysitter to go out together at least once a month. And when we didn't have enough money, we created in-home dates. We had a lot of those when we were going through financial difficulties. The other thing that putting your marriage ahead of kids does is it teaches kids that they're not the center of the universe. It teaches them patience. It teaches them to be less kind of self-centered in a way. And that benefits them later on in life. And I'll share this, and then really, I could talk about this for a while, but share really this one other thing, and then maybe open it up for Q&A, or John, whatever else you'd like me to talk about. Is when my son was a toddler, I put together a binder that was titled Raising a Godly Man. So intentionally, my wife and I intentionally raised our kids, and I put together a binder that were things that I wanted to do with him at certain ages. I just didn't want to forget. I wanted to be intentional about it. Number one on that list of action items was love his mom. That was number one. I felt like the most important thing I could do to raise my son to be a godly man was love his mom. It shows our kids what healthy relationships look like. And it helps them learn how to have their own healthy relationships, whether it's in a marriage or otherwise, in the future. They will model our behavior much more than they will obey what we tell them to do. So I've been super intentional about sharing emotion and affection with my wife in front of my kids. And I can tell you, they roll their eyes at it consistently, but I've also caught them smiling in the background when they don't think we're looking, when I'm hugging my wife or when I'm doting on her. I've caught them doing that consistently for the last decade. And I could tell you from experience, it makes a difference. So God, marriage, children, that's the order that's worked for us. I think that's the order. And lastly, again, we've gone through some turbulent times the last couple of years. It's impacted our families. We've had a lot more time at home in 2020 together as families. Personally, I think the turbulent times are going to be, I think our most turbulent times are ahead of us with, economically, socially, politically. I think that the next couple of years are going to be much more turbulent than the last couple of years. And it's going to be super important to have our homes in order and have these priorities set as we try to navigate through these. So that's, it's kind of it in a nutshell.
No, that's perfect, Mike. One of the things that I wanted everyone to hear is how important the prioritization is, because I think we forget. Second of all, with dating your wife and going on dates, I know that exactly like you said, when I don't have alone time with her and just be with her present, where this happened yesterday. We went out to dinner for the first time in a while, and it was great. 2 hours of just talking, of just getting to know each other again. It feels like, because we're in with 4 kids. There's a circle of chaos at home, and you forget about what it's like to date your wife, to give her attention and shower her with love, peace, and joy. So I agree with Mike 100% that we as a group with our spouses need to definitely prioritize how we spend our time with our spouses. And then I guess the one question I have, and I want to open up to anyone else, is for kids. I love the idea that you were intentional about how to raise a man. You went through the years of what you wanted to do. Was there anything specifically your son, because now he's older now, right? 20 or 21?
He's 21.
Okay. Is there anything that really stood out that he ever gave you feedback that helped him become a man, or just something that that you did throughout his years that resonated with him?
Yeah, that's a great question. He hasn't mentioned anything specifically, but he and I have talked about it. He has mentioned that, yeah, the things that we did, some of the things we did together had a big impact on him. I think, in hindsight, a lot of it was stability and knowing that no matter what, that I was going to be here for him. And again, kind of a quick example. I remember one day being at work, and this is in the middle of chaos at work. And I learned that he was going through a difficult day emotionally with a friend. And he was, I think, a senior in high school at the time. And it was something he was dealing with, a friend who was emotionally disturbed. And really, I think she had either contemplated or had attempted suicide in the past. And so he was faced with this for the first time. And I dropped everything and said, the work can wait. And I went home to spend time with him to make sure that he was okay. And this was the only, I told him straight out, I said, listen, I don't care what's going on. I'm always going to be here for you. You are my top priority, blah, blah, blah. In the midst of talking about a lot of other stuff. This was really the only time I actually saw him tear up. I could tell at that point, he knew that no matter what was going on, that he was going to have a mom and dad that were going to be there for him to help him in any stage of life. So that's kind of, I think it's that stability, the love, knowing that he's loved.
Yeah, no, I think that's wonderful. And I think that's the one word I would use. That's the mortar between God and your spouse and your kids. It's just the divine love that you have for all those entities. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up for questions to you, of anyone, in regards to not only spousal relationship questions, but actually just, not everyone here is married. So any questions that they may have, or you may have, in regards to just forming stronger relationships and how we can do that. So anyone, go ahead. The floor is open to you guys. I have to be like a classroom teacher and pick on people sitting here, Mike. Come on, someone's got one question to ask Mike.
Hey, I'll jump in real quick just so we can kill the crickets. Mike, I'm just curious, and I agree with, you and I've had this conversation. Our lives are very similar, or kind of paralleled as far as our marriage and our beliefs and thoughts and such. And I think 100% with what you were saying, we've always said this as well, like more is caught than taught. And so similarly to John's question, but I'm just curious, two-part question. One, how have you seen your kids act out over the course of, now they're, 18, 20 years of teaching, and watching them watch you? Because we've always tried to model that as well. Like, hey, mom and dad came first. Mom and dad are first. Mom and dad take care of each other first, and then we take care of you. And how have you seen that play out in their lives, or their mindset, or their just how, as they start to enter adulthood, has that started to come out a little bit more, and as a I guess, I don't know, maybe respect level towards you guys? Or it's interesting because I think in this day and age, when, as you were saying that, this is very personal, of course, we taught those things, and our kids, I can look and we can hear them talk, even though they have not, a couple of them are not serving the Lord anymore. They're kind of gone their own way. But there's certain aspects of what was caught that comes out in them. And so I was just curious about that in your kids, if you've seen that with making each other a priority and seeing that play out in their lives today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I've seen particularly I've seen my son make decisions to spend time with family, like even extended family, ahead of doing other things that normal teenagers would do. It's just almost uncanny, you know, and almost to the point where it's like, you don't have to do this. You don't have to go with us to this. He's like, no, I want to. And, you know, asking him, we do special things for our kids on their birthdays and things like that and when they do things well to kind of celebrate, and they want to do family stuff. It's pretty wild. You know, also I think one other thing, Tim, to answer that, putting God first and making that clear in everything that we do. My son goes to a private Christian school. He made the choice. I was shocked. Again, I was surprised because his other choices, I thought, were from a worldly perspective, were a lot more you know, enticing. And he chose on his own to go to a private Christian school. My daughter did not, but when she was looking for roommates, the roommate, by the way, if you have kids that are going to college, the roommate situation, how they connect with each other before they even enter school is just, it's fabulous. But anyway, you know, connecting with, trying to find roommates, you put your criteria, who you are, you know, the type of people you want. And one of them was she wanted someone who was going to be going to church regularly because she wanted to room with a Christian. Awesome. So that kind of speaks to that priority a little bit, I think. And I really haven't thought about that question that much, Tim, but yeah, I appreciate it that, yeah, they've definitely shown signs of picking that up among other things, but the cliche, actions speak louder than words is a cliche for a reason. They will model what we do far greater than anything we could tell them. And I tell you that from experience too, because I've tried to tell my kids plenty of things that they didn't follow.
Yeah. Well, and I say that just because I appreciate the work that you're doing and the stuff that you're putting out there, because it is true. And we see the fruits of it as they get older, and we might not see the fruits immediately. So I guess I'm speaking to those parents out there who are struggling with some kids who are gone the wayward way, right? Or the prodigals. But the fruits there's things in them, the seed's been planted. And I think, you know, with our daughter specifically, we're starting to see some of those things to, you know, percolate back up. You know, that seed is starting to take root a little bit, and things are starting to be seen. So I think that's the joy and the hope, is that you just keep praying, you keep watering, because you know that you've planted the right seeds in your children. So it's good to see like your daughter say, hey, these are the things that I want, and your son, even the direction that he's going. So that's cool. Appreciate you sharing.
Yeah. Great analogy with the planting and the watering. We got to be patient. God, it's so hard when our kids, particularly when they're younger, and then you see them change as teenagers and our influence slowly diminishes over that time. It's so hard to be patient when it's like, hey, I showed you how to do this. I told you to do this. How come you're not doing it yet? How come you're not doing it the way I want you to do it? But they will, man. Yeah. You know, the whole, you know, this, John, the adage that you become like the 5 people you spend the most time around. Well, the two of the people that our kids spend the most time around for their first 18 years of life are us, mother and father. Mm-hmm. No, it's no wonder they turn into us, and we turn into our parents, right? Without some specific intervention. So yeah, I mean, they're around us for 18 plus years. So they're going to pick up our habits.
So in your book too, I love all these points. I'm shifting gears just a little bit for those who may not have a relationship right now, or may not have a strong relationship with their spouse because of the kids and the chaos and all this. So can you touch on I think it was the first chapter, you talked about how you got to take care of you first before you can take care of. So talk about the importance. And this is why 40 days really exists, is because you're taking 40 days to kind of reflect, reset, and then go forward on making a better version of you, so then you could connect better with your spouse and friends and family. So go ahead and talk about that. And then Kelly has a question after you answer this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great point, because it speaks to that section in the book speaks to everybody. Knowing yourself. I talk about it in terms of really what was sort of the first step for me in building a strong relationship, a strong marriage, and strong family. It was knowing myself. And I started that process before I even met my wife. It was uncanny how she and I were going through similar situations in different ways, but we were trying to discover ourselves in our early to mid 20s. And once we really started to get a firm grasp of who we are, what we wanted to be about, and we're comfortable with ourselves, that's when we met. I mean, I don't think it was a coincidence at all, but that speaks to everybody in every aspect of life. Knowing who you are, knowing what you're going to stand for and what you're not, and being good with that, being okay with that, with yourself. That transcends all relationships. And again, transparency, I'm kind of revitalizing that in my own life. I don't have it here with me, but I went on vacation with my wife to celebrate our 25th anniversary last month. It was the first time in probably a year that I kind of decompressed a little bit. I mean, I'd been, the grind, John, right? I mean, I'd been at the grind every single day for so long. And I realized, man, I got to get back to knowing myself a little bit better, because I'd gotten into a pattern of just wake up, execute. Get to the end of the day, I didn't get as much done as I wanted to. Start the next day all over again. Execute. And so I'm going through that again. When I got home from vacation, I bought 2 journals. And the primary purpose of the journals is to get out of here and here who I am and who I'm becoming still. That's a lifelong process. But to have healthy relationships in all aspects of life, got to know who we are.
And the thing I'll add to that is we should always be transforming. Okay. We should always be becoming a better version, per se. And the only way to do that, and this is why I love the 40 Days program, is that it allows me to do this reset. And like you said, I'm journaling more. In this book, the way it's set up is I think about, what am I doing in my life? Like, is what I do every day matter? And that's why I got off of social media for this period. And some of us in the group are doing it as well, because you're spending hours or sometimes a mass amount of time to people who aren't even that really concerned about your life. I'm gonna be honest. You're trying to influence instead of really have a intimate relationship with them to help them genuinely. Yeah. So it's a good, and Mike, we're right on the same page, because once you publish a book, I think you go through this process of like, okay, now it's out there.
Yeah.
What's my next step? And I need to talk to God about this. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, Callie, go ahead. I apologize.
Okay, so my question is, what happens if your husband is not much of a believer? Josh is not much of a believer, but I want to put God first in our marriage. But how do I go about doing it without stepping on his toes?
Great question. So first, I would say find where you do have common ground, and kind of highlight that. Start there, right? What commonalities do you have? Scripture says, I'm going to paraphrase this because I don't have it in front of me, but Scripture says for wives to be an example for their husbands.
Because I've been reading Proverbs 31, and I'm like, okay, that's everything I want to be, but I don't know how to go, interpret it into my marriage. Well, yeah.
You said I think you said he's not as much of a believer. So is he is he a believer?
Well, we've been attending a new church, and he's coming to terms with, okay, Jesus and God aren't that bad, but he's not fully said, oh, I want this to be everything that you believe. So it's hard.
Yeah. My heart goes out to you first as well. But you're in I'll go back to kind of similarly, from what, the story I told earlier about how I got the perspective that, boy, what a great opportunity for God to show that he's head of our family when things were kind of breaking down and chaotic. What an opportunity you have to be a witness every day for your husband, and he's going to need it. And again, I'll go back to the Ephesians verses that you're to be an example. And I actually talked about that in the appendix of my book. Again, I'll paraphrase it so I don't spend time looking it up, but I think there are some reasons why Paul wrote about that for women's to be an example, because let's face it, generally men are a little bit more immature at times, right? Particularly when we get to, you need no further proof than you could take a couple of smart men or a few smart men, you put them together in a room and the collective IQ plummets. It's just, and that it's not, we see it in our teenagers, we see it in our toddlers, but I don't think that really goes away when we become adults. And I think that's why Paul wrote about that we're, men, we're going to have our struggles. And Paul said, you be the example. And I think about him writing that in that time when, women they were subservient in a way to men. And he was really calling them out to say, you need to be an example because your husband's going to need you, be an example of Christ for him. So that's, find where you have common ground and continue to be an example for him, pray and have patience. It's really not much different than, it's going to sound really weird, but not much different than parenting. It's being a model for him.
Okay. And then, is there a way John could give me your phone number? Because there's another question I want to ask, but I want it to be more one-on-one if possible. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Absolutely. I was going to say as well, if you all need anything, please consider me a resource. You can, John, if you want, feel free to share my phone number. That's probably the easiest way. I've limited my social media as well. So I've got time limit on my social media every day. So I don't check it as much as I used to. You could DM me through Instagram as well, but I think John, if you wanted to share my number, that's fine. Reach out to me anytime. Yeah,
I'll do that. I think, and that's a perfect segue to end, because I was just going to say, Mike, thank you for your time. Number one, I read his book. It's terrific. I loved it. I wish I had that book when I think it should be given to everyone when they first get married, to be honest, because it's a staple of stories and not rules. I think it's just stories that you went through, your trials and tribulations, and how you learn to prioritize, God, spouse, kids, and strong relationships. And the one thing that I would say too, and it came to me yesterday after my date, was, and Callie, this goes to your point, you have to have the same standards in life, per se. You both are Christians. You just are different levels of your relationship with the Lord and Christ. So you have the same. Well, I mean, you get what I'm saying, though. Like he's not a Buddhist. He's not. You get him. He's not in a different sect of religion, and he's going to church with you and your family, which is huge.
That's huge.
But the thing is, we have to understand, we don't have to have the same personalities. That's what makes us beautiful in that relationship together, is that my wife and I are complete opposites end of the spectrum, but we still have the same standards for our family of love, caring, support, and God at our center. So Mike, what I'd like you to do, if you don't mind, is to pray us out tonight. And I will share your contact information with everybody in the group, in our group chat. And I truly appreciate your time, brother.
Yeah. No, thank you guys. This is something that I've been passionate about for over 25 years. It's been my guiding compass, has been my marriage and my family. And so I appreciate any opportunity to share and like I said, to be a resource for you all. Are there any specific prayer needs, requests before I close this out?
I just know from the dialogue in our group, Mike, is that I think a lot of people who are married, just to mend some of those gaps in their relationship. There's many different ones, So I think that if we could just pray for a collective whole of strengthening relationships together with God, I think that would be a good prayer, and anything else that you would like to pray for.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Father, I thank you so much for gathering these people here today in this group, and for all those that are going through the 40 days of deliverance. I thank you and praise you for putting this on John's heart, and all others that have made this possible. And I do ask throughout these 40 days, Father, that you deliver them into a new future, and a closer relationship with you, a closer relationship with those that are in their immediate families, be it their spouses, their kids. Father, wherever there is a divide, I ask that you create a bridge. Wherever there is discord, I ask that you bring healing. You are not a God of confusion, but a God of clarity and peace. So I ask that you bring clarity where needed, that you bring peace where needed. We know that these abound, faith, hope, and love, and that the greatest of these is love. And we know that love conquers all. So I pray a special outpouring of love upon everyone here, that wherever there are solutions that are needed to bring people closer together, and people closer with you, Father, that you shower them with love, because we know that love never, ever fails. It's in Jesus' name we pray and we believe together. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, thank you so much for your time, just for being who you are, and having a passion for teaching relationships. So everyone today, thank you for being here. And I look forward to us growing together. We're day 13. So we're not even close to halfway yet. And please reach out to me, reach out to Mike. I'm going to share your contact information in our group chat. And just, again, I'm so grateful for all of you, for your time, and keep being disciplined. Mike Bellini is the disciplined man. If you read my book, he's in that chapter of discipline, because he learned that discipline equals freedom, which also makes you stronger mentally, physically, and spiritually. And you have a greater connection of who you are. And once you know that, you can really build up other people along in your journey of life. So it's another resource too, Mike. A shout out to you for that, not only with relationships, but a man of discipline as well. So, all right, guys, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Mike, I'll talk to you later this week, and I will share your information. Okay.
Sounds great. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks.